Tonight, the 8th Annual GANYC Apple Awards, presented by the Guides Association of New York City. Brought to you in part by Beyond Times Square, a New York City luxury travel expert serving individual and group travelers for more than 19 years. And now, please welcome the President of the Guides Association of New York City, Dr. Emma Guest-Gonzalez.
Fellow New Yorkers, visitors from around the world, good evening. Thank you for joining us and welcome. Welcome to the 8th Annual GANYC Apple Awards. We often see articles floating around the internet and on social media asking the same question: why do we love New York City so much? The answers are as diverse as our city's 8 million plus residents. In fact, diversity and variety are at the top of most lists and have been hallmarks of our city since its very beginning. Centuries ago, Lenape was home to indigenous groups speaking various dialects, with 4 separate ones spoken on what would soon become the streets of Manhattan. The Dutch and later settlers who displaced the indigenous tribes spoke 18 different languages. Today, our 5 boroughs are home to nearly 800. New York's role as economic and cultural capital of the United States is primarily thanks to its diversity as well, along with the unparalleled sense of opportunity that pervades the hearts and minds of those who are here, whether they had the good luck to be born here or the good sense to come from elsewhere. For many of us, the city isn't just a place to love, it is the love of our lives. And with as much complexity of character as the people we love, this place keeps surprising us through thick and thin. Let's launch tonight's festivities with a reminder of all things New York is. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our host for the evening, an Emmy-nominated journalist for New York One and a good friend to our association, Ms. Shannan Ferry.
Thank you, Emma. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 8th Annual Apple Awards ceremony for the Guides Association of New York City. When these awards first launched in 2015, we called it the first annual in hopes that there would be a second and that there would be more after that. No one knew for sure, though, if there would be. But now, here we are. The times are, of course, more uncertain than ever before. The future, less predictable than ever before. The world has this feeling like anything can happen, right? But the GANYC Apple Awards keep coming back to celebrate the immortal, indestructible city of New York. We just keep coming back. The world changes, and we also change with it. But we still take time to congratulate, say, an author on a new book. That tired old phrase, the new normal, that we just keep hearing over and over again, changes how we eat, play, shop, work, you name it. But we still say thank you to the curator of a new exhibition for enriching our lives. The news headlines make us wonder if we're ever going to really feel that true hope again. I know, because I read them all the time, but we still find a way to raise a glass, to toast to the brilliance of a cultural icon that has reminded us all why we wanted to live in this city in the first place. That is why we are still here. That's why we'll always be here. Whether your great love is Broadway, for example, or the corner table in a cabaret, a book signing at the Strand, or jazz in Harlem, say, the hustle and bustle of Times Square at 7 p.m. As much as people complain about Times Square, there's something magical to that too. Or the tense anticipation of the closing bell on Wall Street, the harbor that gave our ancestors New York's history, or the cyber technology that gives our children New York's future. There are still a million ways to celebrate this city. As the Gershwin said, they can't take that away from me. So pour yourself a glass of champagne, get dressed to the nines, obviously from the waist up, because we can get away with that nowadays in this digital age, and let's start giving out some trophies. So our first award is for outstanding achievement in support of New York City preservation. And as a wise man once said, without our old buildings, every city would be every city. To present the award, he spent 6.5 years as architectural critic for the New York Sun, and his books include The Architectural Guidebook to New York City, Memories of Times Past, New York, and New York City Landmarks. Please welcome Francis Moroney.
Thank you, Shannan. There's a famous saying that the more things change, the more they stay the same. Sadly, that isn't always true for cities. All too often, the more cities change, the more unrecognizable they become. Sometimes that's good. I don't think anyone wishes the 5 Points had remained as it was in the 19th century and that the municipal building had never been built. Often it's a case of mourning the original Metropolitan Opera, Madison Square Garden, and Penn Station. This is why preservation is as important as it ever was. That has stayed the same. The nominees for outstanding achievement in support of New York City preservation are the MTA for the redesign of the Times Square shuttle, St. George Theater Restoration, Inc., for preserving a Staten Island landmark, Landmarks Preservation Commission Chair Sarah Carroll for recognizing the cultural values of New York City landmarks beyond their architectural merit, as per 227 Duffield Street in Brooklyn, important in the history of abolition. Greenwood Cemetery for the reinterment of remains in Washington Square Park. And the GANYC Apple Award goes to the St. George Theater.
Thank you so much to the Guides Association of New York City for this prestigious honor and award. Congratulations to all the nominees this evening. The St. George Theater broke ground in 1928. opened up December 4th, 1929 as a showcase for vaudeville and motion pictures, had a great life to the 70s, fell on hard times, and were closed for about 3 decades. My mom, the late Mrs. Rosemary, my sister Luann Sorrentino, we established the nonprofit organization, the St. George Theater Restoration Inc., in 2004 to save this beautiful jewel from being torn down. At that time, the theater was a white elephant, and the St. George area was a ghost town after 5 p.m. Well, times have changed. We take pride in our restoration efforts. We are currently working on a monumental project with evergreen architectural arts to preserve the interior, including the woodwork and marble and walls and ceilings and murals and more. We began in 2004 with the basics of working on repairing the roof, getting the plumbing, electrical working, getting stage equipment, putting seats in the venue, and we accomplished that. Today, we offer diverse and exciting concerts and special events and impactful educational and outreach programs. It's a very emotional moment for me. My family and I have strived to make Staten Island a better place, and saving the St. George Theater was such a special and very important goal of my mom. She passed away back in 2009, but we're here to continue on with her legacy. And it takes a village. So my sister and I are so grateful for our dedicated board of directors led by Brian Leyline, our amazing 8-team staff, our volunteers, and all the elected officials, local, city, and statewide. We truly appreciate Guides Association of New York City for connecting us so many years to the tourists of New York City and putting us on the map. New York City's back. Visit us, please. Congratulations to all the nominees, and thank you all for making New York City a better and amazing place to visit. Cheers. Thank you.
And to present the award for Outstanding Achievement in Support of New York City Tourism, very important nowadays and all the time, they are both proud GANYC members who have been guiding for the better part of a decade. She began on boats, he began on buses, and they both graduated to custom design walking tours for visitors from all over the globe. Please join me in welcoming Megan Murad and Ayinde Stevens.
Good evening, AJ.
Good evening, Megan.
So, outstanding achievement in support of New York City tourism.
What is an outstanding achievement in support of New York City tourism?
Well, look at the people and organizations that have won in the past. Justin Ferrate, the Central Park Conservancy, Michael Morgenthau, Open House New York.
Yeah, I'm not detecting much of a pattern with that list.
Okay, yes, they're all very different from each other, but they all have one thing in common.
Great legs?
That would be having two things in common. They all work to make the city and the industry better. They enhance and improve the public perception of the tourism industry in New York City.
Hey, that's from the GANYC Constitution.
Indeed it is.
And with tourism being the industry everyone loves to hate, it's easy to forget how valuable it is, both socially and economically.
When you consider that some of the most widely loved cultural figures in the city made their name saying witty and clever things about how much they hate tourists.
How awful can you get?
And what can you do about it?
You can have an award that celebrates the outstanding achievement in support of New York City tourism.
And the nominees are
Mott Street Girls,
Patrick Mock of 46 Bakery for getting the Chinatown paper lanterns installed,
Eli Marcus, Executive Director of City Guide,
Broadway Up Close Tours. And the GANYC Apple Award goes to
Eli Marcus!
Wow. Thank you so much. This is an incredible award. I am so flattered and honored. I am no longer the male Susan Lucci of New York City tourism. This old cat's been let out of the bag, and I really appreciate that. And I want to thank the Guides Association, who have so beautifully showcased the excitement of New York City for the rest of the world. And so, you guys have done an incredible job. And so I started in the tourism industry 5 decades ago. Did I just say actually 5 decades? Oh, golly, that's a long time. So I've had 2 main goals all along the way. And my first goal really is to help New York City tourism related businesses connect with the rest of the world, and also to motivate and inspire people to do and be their best. And so for the last 34 years, I accomplished my first goal with City Guide magazine, New York City's largest circulation visitor magazine. I accomplished my second goal through my podcast, The Motivation Show. And so people often ask me, what is my secret sauce for success? And in one word, it's collaboration. And I've been, very grateful that I've been able to collaborate with New York City theater, New York City restaurants, New York City retail, there's New York City tourist attractions, the best of the best that this city has to offer. And that has been a great, great journey. And so I always counsel people to never complain about being jostled in Times Square. All those elbows actually have a reason. We learned in March 2020 what happens when we are not jostled. So I will continue to do my part to get New York City at full jostle. And rest assured, New York City will bounce back. So behind every successful man, they say, there stands a woman. In my case, there stands a great one. In fact, my fond nickname for her is the Great One, as it's never just about oneself. So I want to, of course, thank my wife for helping me to be in this position to get this wonderful award. And I also want to thank all the other great nominees, all so deserved. You all deserve to win. And lastly, New York City is coming back, and I'm going to be part of it, and I'm happy to collaborate with anybody and everybody on here. You're all fantastic. Thanks again to the Guides Association.
Next up, we have the award for outstanding achievement in support of New York City culture. To present, we have a gentleman who served for a decade as vice president of Broadway and soundtrack recordings at Universal Music Group and is now music director at the Free Synagogue of Flushing. Please welcome Brian Drutman.
Good evening. If ever there was a city that reminds us why culture matters, it's New York. This town is the capital of the United States in all things except politics. The theater capital, the fashion capital, the music capital, the economic capital, the intellectual capital, you name it. Break all that down and you have the cultural capital. And the great thing is that it's a cycle. By being a cultural champion, New York draws people from all over the world to come and contribute. And what do they contribute? What they learned from their cultures. That is why we have cuisine, music, language represented from all over the world. Want to see the world? Come to New York. The world is here. The nominees for Outstanding Achievement in support of NYC culture are the China Institute, Sing for Your Seniors, the Actors Fund, the WOW Project. And the GANYC Apple Award goes to the Actors Fund.
Thank you. That's a great recognition. Thank you so very much. Hi, I'm Tom Exton, Chief Advancement Officer of the Actors Fund. And I want to thank the Guides Association of New York for this great recognition of the Actors Fund. We all know how important culture is and entertainment is. It's the quintessential American export. It generates trillions of dollars towards our country's GDP. It employs tens of thousands of people here in New York. It drives tourism and economic development. But the performing arts and entertainment are more than just a business. The arts give voice to our fears and express our joy. They are our companion and our conscience. We see ourselves mirrored in them, and we are better spouses, friends, co-workers, and citizens for it. They teach our children, remind us of what we share as human beings, and are the most vivid expression of our diversity. And imagine surviving the last 2 years without entertainment and culture, without television or movies, without music or streaming service. So entertainment and the people who create and deliver it make our good days sing and our bad days bearable. And that's why the Actors Fund is here. And we've been here for 140 years. For everyone in entertainment, not just actors, but everyone in entertainment. People on the stage and behind the stage, in front of the screen, behind the screen. And it seems like everything that we've done over the last 140 years prepared us for this last 2 years. Since March of 2020, we have given out $26 million. That's 10 times what we would normally do in that period of time in emergency financial assistance to 18,000 needed individuals needing help. And we will be there for the next 140 years. So thanks again to the New York Guides Association for this amazing recognition of the Actors Fund. Thank you very, very much.
New York is a city of sounds. And while some out-of-towners say they could never get used to the cacophony of noise in our city, there are many New Yorkers who visit the countryside and just can't sleep without the lullaby of the sirens and the horns going off non-stop. To celebrate sound in the city, our presenter for outstanding achievement in radio, podcast, audio, spoken word, has a familiar voice to patrons of the Brooklyn Public Library, for whom she has long been the host of the interview podcast, Our Streets, Our Stories. Please join me in welcoming two-time GANYC Apple Award nominee, Taina Evans.
Thank you and good evening. We live in an age where so many people feel unheard. Perhaps this is true of every age, but it seems especially true today. And yet, at the same time, today, we have more ways and more avenues to make our voices heard than ever before. Where once only those with fancy radio equipment and advantageous reception could pump up the volume and speak out over the airwaves, today is an age of vloggers, YouTubers, podcasters, and more. Everyone as legitimate a voice as those on old-fashioned radio. I should know I'm one of them. And we encourage you to listen to us and maybe even to join us. Make your voice heard. The nominees for Outstanding Achievement in Radio Podcast, Audio Spoken Words are Paul Cavalcante from WQXR, Weekend Jazz and Classical Broadcast. Housing Notebook, WBAI. Dean Karayanis, The History Author Show. Soundcheck, WNYC. And the GANYC Apple Awards goes to Paul Cavalcante from WQXR.
While no one can say that there is anything good about COVID or even that it carries any sort of silver lining, what we can say is that life in COVID times has taught us what we truly love and what we truly value, right? For many, the internet has become the most useful tool and the most delightful toy at their disposal when spending more time between their four walls than they ever had possibly imagined. To present the award for Outstanding New York City Website, we have the owner of one of the finest sites in the tourism business. He's a GANYC Apple Award winner and the head of New York Adventure Club. Please join me in welcoming Corey William Schneider.
Thank you, Shannan. To say that since its beginnings, the internet has changed everything would be an understatement of epic proportions. But it has, and it's worth remembering that it has. So much work and so much play is conducted online nowadays that it's easy to forget what life was like before every company, nonprofit, government department, and institution had a website. Yet in the last 2 years, companies like mine went from walking tours for 20 people to virtual tours for 200. The internet brought us together on an epic scale when getting together in any other way was simply out of the question. Access to a computer and a signal became the great equalizer for travelers from all over the world, in much the same way that it is at this very moment, as we enjoy this very awards ceremony online. The nominees for Outstanding New York City Website are NYC on the cheap, NYC Songlines, nycsubway.org, urbanarchive.org. And the GANYC Apple Award goes to ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in GANYC Apple Awards history, we have a tie. Alphabetically, the first of our tied winners is NYC Songlines.
Thank you so much to the Guide Association of New York City for this tremendous honor. I want to thank everyone who has written a history of New York City, everyone who's written a guidebook, everyone who's put up a website, anyone who has cared enough about sense of place to tell me where things happened. And I hope to be doing just that for New Yorkers and everyone who loves New York for many years to come, and to keep expanding the New York songlines and hopefully finish the whole island.
And the second of our tied winners is urbanarchive.org.
Thank you so much for the award. Urban Archive is super honored and proud to receive this. We're really proud of our partners and all of the organizations that have participated in the project. And we're looking forward to bringing just new technology and additional programs to all of our fellow New Yorkers. So thanks again for the nomination, and congratulations to all the nominees. We're super proud to receive this. So thank you, and we will see you next year.
I have heard many tour guides say that a lot of their visitors know New York better than they think they do because they've seen the image of the skyline and the streetscape captured in countless photos before they ever arrived here. Our presenter for Outstanding Achievement in Photography knows a lot about images, though she is now a tour guide, a GANYC member, and the founder of Big Mouth Big City Tours. She spent years as a professional illustrator and graphic artist. She is, in fact, the creator of the title cards for tonight's ceremony. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Deborah Blau.
For some visitors to New York City, it's love at first sight. They can't put their cameras down. There is so much to fascinate the first-time visitor. But what's truly extraordinary is the fascination that New York City holds for visual artists who've seen these streets over and over again. We find our city to be a quirky, moody seductress, and we love her. And when the light hits her face, just so, even though we've seen that face a million times, our hearts beat a little faster, and we fall in love with her all over again. What stories will she tell through her endless richness of color and texture and streetscape? and the daily ballet of her people. The nominees for Outstanding Achievement in New York City Photography are Michael Avedon for The New Yorker, Victor Abreu, a New York City ballet dancer in Jamar Roberts' Water Right. Gretchen Robinette for Gothamist, a surreal, empty Times Square. Maureen Steinhardt on Instagram, sending more love from New York City. Clay Williams for the New York Times, Pergolas at Casa La Femme. And the GANYC Apple Award goes to Gretchen Robinette for Gothamist, a surreal, empty Times Square.
Thank you so much for the award. I think it wasn't mentioned that was on New Year's Eve at Times Square, where 2021, when nobody was allowed to be in the perimeter of the ball drop. So it was extremely odd. There was just photographers and just about it to make it look like a different scene on the TV screen for viewers, but it was very surreal. I photographed a lot of New York City during the pandemic, started 2020, and that was probably the very strangest scene with New Year's Eve with no people there. So that's what that photo is from. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
The Ultimate 2022 Thanksgiving Parade Viewing Party in New York City, only at Beyond Times Square.
If there is one thing that I have learned from getting to know the members of the Guides Association of New York City, it is that they are a family. And while of course it is fun to hear the history and the trivia of the city, wonderful to finally capture that elusive photograph and thrilling to discover a charming hidden block that I've never seen in all of my years in New York. The best part of getting to know the different guides has been witnessing their belief and support for one another. And that is the focus of the Lee Gelber Award for Guiding Spirit. To present, we have a past vice president of GANYC who continues to serve as chair of the Industry Relations Committee. Please join me in welcoming GANYC Apple Award winner, Michael Morgenthau.
As a professional tour guide here in New York City, I get to share lots of great New Yorkese words with my guests. Many come from Yiddish, words like schmutz, schwitz, schmier, among many others. However, one of my absolute favorites is the word mensch, which means a person of high integrity and honor. In the 11 years that I've been a professional tour guide and a member of GANYC, I have never met a single person more menschy than Harvey Davidson. He is kind, generous, humble, honorable, ethical, and a tireless advocate for GANYC and all working tour guides in New York City. For these reasons and so many more, I can think of no one more deserving of this honor than Harvey. When I joined GANYC, I quickly learned of all of the things that Harvey did for the association. He started and ran the Industry Relations Committee to connect the tour guide community with the larger travel trade in New York City, and took time from his busy schedule to represent GANYC and all New York City tour guides at tourism events at home and around the world. For several years, Harvey was GANYC's sole representative at NFTGA and WFTGA conventions and other major industry trade shows. His vision and leadership helped GANYC find its footing and pointed it towards what it has become today, the preeminent local tourist guide association in the world. At the time, I admired Harvey's energy and his willingness to devote his time and effort to his fellow guides. But it was only once that I started working closely with Harvey on the GANYC Executive Board in 2016 that I realized what a mensch he truly is. Shortly after I was elected to the board, Harvey expressed a desire to take a step back and no longer be the chair of the Industry Relations Committee. I was tasked with filling his very big shoes. I started making the rounds of tourism industry networking events with Harvey. I marveled at the ease with which he networked and schmoozed with people from all levels of the business, from the president and CEO of NYC & Company, to the owner of the newest attraction in town, to the longtime restaurant owner who was eager to welcome tour groups. Everyone loved Harvey, everyone respected Harvey, and everyone wanted his ear. And he was always willing to listen. If I was on my own at such events, when I mentioned how I was working with Harvey, everyone's faces would light up and immediately they would exclaim, "We love Harvey." At first, hearing how much everyone in the travel business loved and respected him made me skeptical. How can anyone be this universally admired and beloved? But the more I got to know Harvey, I quickly saw that he truly was worthy of all the praise. I got to see it on a personal level, as Harvey has been an amazing mentor to me, a willing sounding board, a confidant, a networking maven, and the most generous person in terms of time and effort that anyone could ever hope for in a volunteer organization. Every single New York City tour guide, whether a member of GANYC or not, owes Harvey a tremendous debt of gratitude. His unflagging championing of GANYC and New York City tour guides has raised the profile of tour guides here in New York City and around the world. All these years later, I laugh at the idea of Harvey saying he wanted to take a step back from his GANYC responsibilities, because he seems more omnipresent than ever, constantly reaching out to organizations and individuals to advocate for GANYC and New York City tour guides. He continues to be a guiding spirit for me and all of us in the tour guiding industry. And above all, he remains the living embodiment of the word mensch. So let's have a look at the mensch himself. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor to present the 2022 winner of the Lee Gelber Award for Guiding Spirit, Harvey Davidson. Congratulations, Harvey.
Thank you, Mike. It is a humbling experience to be honored by one's peers. That said, I am very humbled by this honor, especially when this award is named after Lee Gelber, the person who trained me as a guide working on double-decker buses. As with most reward ceremonies, recipients typically thank a number of people. I would be remiss if I did not thank Harriet, my wife of over 60 years, who has been by my side except for the first 18 months out of 3 years of our marriage, when I was away because of my being in the Army, and other times when I was managing meetings and events, and also later on when I was directing over-the-road tours. And in addition, supporting my efforts when I had to get up in the middle of the night to make sure I was on time to meet a tour group in the morning, and when I stayed up late at night to send emails to potential industry partners that I met earlier in the evening at industry events. There are many members of GANYC I want to thank for helping me as a guide that are too numerous to mention, and I would not want to leave out their names. I apologize if I do. Most people do not grow up wanting to be a tour guide, except in some other countries where tourism is a major part of a country's economy and a recognized profession that requires years of formal training and study to be a licensed guide. In some situations, a university degree in tourism is mandatory. After I earned a master's degree in tourism and travel management, I found it easy to segue from a career in meeting and event management and tourism and travel sales and marketing management to tour guiding. Unfortunately, while I was the sales and marketing director for the Empire State Building, 9/11 happened and the observatory closed with no indication when it would reopen. I started consulting with several restaurant groups, attractions, and others wanting tour groups. And when City Sites started its double-decker operation and was looking for guides, Jennifer Ackerson, president of Alon Marketing, suggested I take Lee Gelber's training program, which I did. Then I passed the Department of Consumer Affairs exam to get my license. On becoming a licensed tour guide, I consider myself to be fortunate in having years of training by being a native New Yorker born and raised in Brooklyn and educated in the city school system, where my New York City history, geography, and other subjects provided me with the equivalent years of knowledge about New York City. After gaining some experiences working on double-deckers, I contacted tour operators I had business relationships with and started doing over-the-road and local NYC tours for tourists. I heard about GANYC from fellow guides, went to a meeting, and decided I wanted to join. At one meeting, I asked a few questions, and afterwards, I was approached by Tony DeSante, who was the president. I learned there was a major disagreement within GANYC as the Department of Consumer Affairs, as it was known then, changed the rules for licensing tour guides with a new exam. Some members left, and one result was an opening on the board, and I was asked if I would join it. We were meeting at the Edison Hotel in a room that was overcrowded and not really conducive for holding meetings. Later on, we learned we were going to be evicted because new management wanted to convert the room into a luggage holding area for guests and a small gym facility. This gave me an opportunity to use my background in finding places to hold meetings and my sales experience to convince places to host our meetings, usually at no cost to GANYC. Also, since I was contacting these places, I came up with the idea for industry partners, and I was the first chairman of the Industry Relations Committee. Since then, I'm pleased to see many improvements created by Mike Morgenthau. Under his direction, he started the Job Fair, Tour Your Own City, Guide Week, and Fighting for Guides at the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island. Throughout my business career, I was a member of various industry organizations, and they always had industry partners. So why not GANYC? Mark Landman, GANYC's IT guru, made it possible to support and include my efforts on GANYC's website. In addition, I contacted industry associations for GANYC to become a member. GANYC sent me to various industry association meetings, such as the American Bus Association and SIDA, the Student Youth Travel Association. And this has helped in gaining recognition for GANYC and members getting jobs. GANYC also became active again in the World Federation of Tourist Guides and the National Federation of Tourist Guide Association. And I was elected to positions within those organizations, representing GANYC and attending the biannual conferences. I now represent GANYC in the New York State Industry Association and NYC and Company as an ex officio board member, adding our voice to promote GANYC. Although I have limited my tour guiding assignments, I have continued to learn about New York City by going on site inspections and fam trips and virtually attending Art and Susan Zuckerman's online excellent programs when they are offered. Bob Gelber teases me that when I stop people in the street giving directions to tourists, I encourage them to become tour guides and join GANYC. Also, Pat Braun-Mazuka has been with me in restaurants and watched me trying to sign them up as an industry partner. I'm reminded of a quote from Mark Twain. He said, "Find a job you enjoy doing and you never have to work a day in your life." I found this job as a volunteer member of GANYC. If I can quote an expression I learned from Lee Gelber when working on double-decker tours, it is this: tour guiding is a service industry and tipping is allowed and appreciated. Fellow guides, thank you for honoring me with the Lee Gelber's Guiding Light Award with this humbling experience for my services with GANYC.
The Brooklyn-based author of The Art of Death, Claire of the Sea Light, and more than a dozen other books, is no stranger to the world of awards. She won the Pushcart Prize, the National Book Critics Circle Award, the Langston Hughes Medal, and over 20 other honors before being inducted last year into the New York State Writers Hall of Fame. Here to present the award for Outstanding Achievement in New York City Book Writing Fiction, please welcome Edwige Danticat.
Of the many great things about storytelling, one of the greatest is that it grants us the gift of time travel. All four of tonight's nominees for Outstanding Achievement in New York City Book Writing Fiction are set in a historic time when this always fascinating city was at its most fascinating. Whether you're there to witness the murder of the great city planner Andrew Haswell Green, or to see the opening of the Morgan Library, to catch a show at the Ziegfeld Follies, or to stay at the Hotel Theresa in Harlem, tonight's nominated authors have given us all an irreplaceable gift of peering through a window into a New York from which we have forever changed. And the nominees are The Great Mistake by Jonathan Lee, Harlem Shuffle by Colson Whitehead, The Personal Librarian by Marie Benedict and Victoria Christopher Murray, The Showgirl by Nicola Harrison. And the GANYC Apple Award goes to Harlem Shuffle by Colson Whitehead.
This gentleman is the author of Manhattanville, Old Heart of West Harlem, and Boss of the Grips, The Life of James H. Williams, and the Red Caps of Grand Central Terminal, for which he won the Herbert H. Lehman Prize and the GANYC Apple Award to present Outstanding Achievement in New York City Book Writing Nonfiction. Please join me in welcoming Eric K. Washington.
More and more nowadays, we hear people bemoan the state of public education in the US, and especially we hear people talk about the potential consequences of history and civics not being taught the way they once were. Happily, there are many people whose own sense of curiosity has inspired them to read all kinds of interesting and important books without a single teacher ever telling them they have to do it. So long as human curiosity prevails, we all have a chance. So long as people want to know the historical origins of the things they hear about today, they may be ready for tomorrow. So long as we continue to study and research where we come from, we can clear the path to where we're going. The nominees for Outstanding Achievement in New York City Book Writing Nonfiction are Cathedral Parkway Towers of Harlem's Gate by Sheila Evans. New York, New York, 4 Decades of Success, Excess, and Transformation by Thomas Dyja. Notable New Yorkers of Manhattan's Upper West Side by Jim Mackin. Vanderbilt, The Rise and Fall of an American Dynasty by Anderson Cooper and Catherine Howe. And the GANYC Apple Award goes to Anderson Cooper and Catherine Howe for Vanderbilt.
Hello, members of GANYC. I am so honored and delighted, and I know Anderson joins me in thanking you for this great honor that you've bestowed upon Vanderbilt, the Rise and Fall of an American Dynasty. Your job is to show New York City to the world, and so we are excited to be a part of that mission with you. Thank you so much for considering Vanderbilt for this year's Apple Award for nonfiction, and we're honored and delighted, and thank you for all that you do for our city.
Even before Jules Verne wrote about going around the world in 80 days, and even longer before Nellie Bly actually did it, travel writing has been an important part of journalism. This star travel writer has served as luxury travel and advisor editor at Afar Media, also editor at Virtuoso, and luxury editor for National Geographic. Now working on her book, 100 Hotels of a Lifetime, she is here to present the award for outstanding achievement in article, essay, series writing. Please welcome Annie Fitzsimmons.
Joseph Pulitzer said, "A newspaper that is true to its purpose concerns itself not only with the way things are, but with the way things ought to be." Well, if finding the way things ought to be, rather than being stuck with the way they are, isn't a good reason to go traveling and discovering the places you thought only existed on the page of adventure stories, I don't know what is. Every one of tonight's nominees for outstanding achievement in article, essay, or series writing has touched on a magical aspect of the city that reminds us that New York is the way things ought to be, whether this is found in its people, its history, or its progress. And the nominees are Jen Carlson for New Yorkers on Why They Love NYC Now More Than Ever, Gothamist. David Cruz for From Fiery Wasteland to City Suburbia, The Transformation of Charlotte Street in the South Bronx, Gothamist. Sarah Larson for Eavesdropping Through a Pandemic, The New Yorker. And Ben Yakas for The Secret History of the Great Subway Map Debate of 1978 Revealed, Gothamist. And the GANYC Apple Award goes to Jen Carlson for New Yorkers on Why They Love NYC Now More Than Ever, Gothamist.
This lady is a former jazz singer, a playwright, and an activist, but also a tour guide and a GANYC member. She is best known in the association for her tireless devotion to the Government Relations Committee, working to protect the rights, safety, and jobs of her fellow tourism industry professionals. Please join me in welcoming Leonel Hamanaka.
Lillian Hellman said, "Things start out as hopes and end up as habits." Well, that is certainly true of New York. How many people come here from all over the world, hoping for fame, hoping for romance, hoping for money, hoping for a better life? How often do they say, "I'll spend a few years in New York and then take what I've learned somewhere else," only to discover when the time comes that they can't kick the habit of this dear old dirty town. And the rest of us get used to seeing them here every day. Whether it's a favorite actor on Broadway or the neighbor with a red umbrella who is always on the subway platform at 8:15 sharp, or the charming owner of your corner bodega who speaks 6 languages, or the architect of your favorite building in the world, these great New Yorkers become as much of a habit to us as our city is to them. Then, when we lose them, the city changes for us. It's been changing in this way for 400 years, and I'll bet it will keep changing for 400 more. So let's take a moment to honor the change and say goodbye to the great New Yorkers, the people and the places that we lost in the last year. You will always be our hope and our habit.
Any fan of old black and white movies will tell you that the most important part of the definition of the word classic is the ability to withstand the test of time. We apply that word classic to anything that has survived the weather of the years, whether it's movies or cars or paintings even. When it comes to culinary institutions, a shop that has lived through 2 world wars and more than 20 presidents can definitely be called classic. But an East Village shop that has remained in the same family since 1894 can only be called the Veneros. To present outstanding achievement in New York City food, the owners of Veneros, please welcome Frank and Robert Zerilli.
For as far back as anyone can remember, food has been the center of community building.
In most ancient texts, you read of leaders meeting and breaking bread together.
And breaking bread doesn't have to involve bread or breaking. It can mean anything. It can mean the old Chinese custom of passing strangers a cup of tea. It can be the modern program of Meals on Wheels.
It can be the stone soup legend, or the simple act of sharing cupcakes with your neighbors.
At Veneros, we've been breaking bread with our neighbors for 128 years.
128 years. Hey, you look pretty good for your age.
All right. The nominees for Outstanding Achievement in New York City Food are Tony Benanti of Rudy's Pastry Shop for her baked goods donations to essential health workers. God's Love We Deliver for leasing the Northern Dispensary.
And we have Harlem Biscuit Company for being the culinary comeback of the year in times of COVID. Jack Summers, the first legal black distiller in America, for his mission to educate and highlight the inequities in the beverage business.
And the GANYC Apple Award goes to God's Love We Deliver.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brandon Bryant. I'm the Individual Gifts Officer at God's Love We Deliver. And on behalf of our President and CEO, Karen Pearl, I would like to thank the Guides Association of New York City, our friend Allende Stevens, who helps bring New York City to life to visitors and residents alike. We really are grateful and appreciative of you. We're thankful to Neil and Marika Bender, owners of the Northern Dispensary, where we will be the newest tenants after, I think, something like 30 years of the building being vacant. I will make a note that on the outside of the building is a plaque that reads, "Heal the Sick." And I think it's quite appropriate that our organization is taking over the space to continue to bring the life-saving meals that we do to our neighbors in need. I would say that if you are someone or you know someone who is sick, that is too sick to shop or cook for themselves, we would be honored to serve you and your families. We bring and deliver those meals home to you and your neighbors, full of love and with the nutrition that you need. So we're happy to and honored again to be the recipient of this award. And we're grateful to our nominees in this category. And thanks for keeping New York strong.
If there's one thing visitors always say attracts them to New York for their quality, their vastness, or their sheer number, it's our museums. Our presenter of the award for Outstanding Achievement in New York City Museum Exhibitions has seen her institution through thick and thin in times of COVID, in times of financial difficulty, and in times of racism as well. Please welcome the president of the Museum of Chinese in America, GANYC Apple Award winner, Nancy Yao Mosbach.
In many cities, a museum can advertise simply by saying, "Come see great works of art," or "Come see fascinating ancient artifacts," and that's all. But here in New York City, where the world comes together on a level unlike any other, Each one of our 100+ museums needs a uniquely focused subject matter or a level of quality that will draw and incite. I can testify from a very personal perspective that the best reason to have a particular museum is because we didn't have one that covered the area and its focus enough, and that cultural gaps need to be filled. All 4 of tonight's nominees for outstanding achievement in New York City museum exhibitions fulfill this mission with flying colors. And the nominees are American Weather Vanes, The Art of the Winds, American Folk Art Museum. Kasuma Kazakh Nature, New York Botanical Gardens. New York New Music, 1980 to 1986, Museum of the City of New York. The Treasures, New York Public Library. And the GANYC Apple Award goes to The Treasures, New York Public Library.
Thank you so much. My name is Sarah Spink. I'm the Curatorial Associate for the Polanski exhibition of the New York Public Library's Treasures, and I'm very honored to accept this award on behalf of the library. This was a hugely collaborative effort involving so many curators and staff members. It's the library's first ever permanent exhibition, bringing together over 250 items from across our special collections and research libraries. Some of these are perhaps expected, like our Gutenberg Bible and one of our Shakespeare First Folios. Others are more surprising, like a lock of Beethoven's hair, the original Winnie the Pooh animals, and Virginia Woolf's walking stick. The treasures in this exhibition, which I should say includes a section devoted to New York City, tell the stories of people, places, and moments spanning 4,000 years, offering our visitors the chance to discover, learn, and make new connections, and to expand our understanding of the world and each other. The 56 million items in the library's collections have always been accessible to the public, but one of our main goals with this exhibition is to put a spotlight on that accessibility in a gallery right in the heart of the Stephen A. Schwarzman building. The guides bringing people to the library through our doors help us to achieve that goal, and for that, we're very grateful. We'll be rotating the items on display regularly because of their fragility and for the opportunity to bring in new themes and concepts to explore. So I hope that if you haven't been to visit the exhibition, you will, and that if you have, you will come back. And I thank you again very much on behalf of the library for this award.
Looking for tailor-made luxury travel with authentic local experiences? Beyond Times Square. Feed your travel passion.
Our final presenter of the evening has just completed 6 years on the executive board of GANYC, most recently as vice president. He guides professionally at the Woolworth Building and is a longtime volunteer at the Met Museum and Open House New York. Please welcome Bob Gelber.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure and an honor to present the 2022 GANYC Apple Award for Lifetime Achievement tonight. I've had the good fortune to bring clients to the World Trade Center, specifically 7 World Trade Center, for behind-the-scenes engineering tours for over 12 years. During that time, I've met and worked with Darryl McQuillan, Chief Marketing and Communications Officer for Silverstein Properties, and filmmaker Mike Marcucci. The gracious generosity I've always been afforded when visiting is clearly an extension of the man at the top, real estate developer Larry Silverstein. Over the years, my access has been extended to many of my fellow guides who have been invited to visit the marketing centers, art installations and rooftops, sites that are not available to the general public. Through these visits, we have learned much about Larry Silverstein's love for the city where he grew up. Born into, in his own words, not a very luxurious existence, in a 6-story Brooklyn walk-up, he said the one good thing about his apartment was that it had the best view. And what was the view he had? The buildings of New York City. Having read that real estate was the foundation of wealth, Larry's father became a real estate broker around the time young Larry went to NYU. But it was the younger Silverstein who advised the elder one that becoming a building owner was the way to go. Working in partnership with the tenants to whom they had leased space, the Silversteins asked if they would like to come together for a small investment in the building. From there, they proceeded to buy buildings, renovate buildings, modernize buildings, and eventually lay the foundation and building new buildings from the ground up. In love with the city's verticality and the size of its structures, Larry said as early as the 1970s, "Wouldn't it be wonderful to own the World Trade Center?" That dream came true, and that part of the story begins in the summer of 2001 when Mr. Silverstein signed a $3.2 billion 99-year lease on New York's World Trade Center, 6 weeks before the September 11th attacks. After the devastation, Larry was faced not only with the heartbreak of the destruction of a legendary piece of New York real estate that he dreamed of owning for years, but with an enormous financial burden as well. His plan had been to modernize the World Trade Center and then retire. That's what he had promised his wife, Clara. After the attacks, Clara told Larry that she knew he would be unhappy just walking away and encouraged him to rebuild. They assumed it would take 8 to 10 years, never thinking it would be more than 20. But it's due to Larry's determination that Lower Manhattan is once again a focal point of activity in New York City. In May of 2006, Silverstein Properties opened the new 7 World Trade Center, the first office tower to be rebuilt at the site, and the first LEED certified office building in New York City. Other World Trade Center buildings followed, designed by such prestigious architects as Richard Rogers and Fumihiko Maki. More are still to come. In addition to the World Trade Center, Larry's company manages Silver Towers, 2 60-story residential towers at 600 West 42nd Street. The square block development houses over 2,200 families, as well as 120 Broadway, 120 Wall Street, 529 Fifth Avenue, and 1177 Avenue of the Americas. But as much as Larry loves the industry in which he works and leads, it's not all work and no play. He is a passionate yachtsman, a classical music enthusiast, and a board member of the New York Philharmonic. He contributes his time and resources to organizations that are dedicated to higher education and medical research, meeting utilitarian needs, and supporting the arts. So the artistic city about which we've heard so much tonight will still have such a rich culture to offer the Silverstein family's 8 grandchildren as it has for Larry and Clara. Within the last year, the marble exterior walls of the World Trade Center complex's Performance Center have been added to the structure. And upon completion, for the first time, Lower Manhattan will have its own world-class center for the performing arts. The journey of carrying on the traditions of commerce and progress on which New York City was built has been pretty incredible, and it's not over yet. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the 2022 GANYC Apple Award for Lifetime Achievement honoree, Larry Silverstein.
Good evening. I'm honored to accept this Lifetime Achievement Award from the Guides Association of New York City. I've spent the past 20 years of my life rebuilding the World Trade Center and helping to transform Lower Manhattan into a dynamic live-work neighborhood where 40% of the people who live here work here. A big part of our work is letting people know that what we have done here and what a wonderful place this has become. You are an important part of getting the word out. Through your work, hundreds and thousands of visitors have a better understanding of the World Trade Center and downtown Manhattan. Thank you for all you've done.
And that is our show, ladies and gentlemen. We look forward to next year. And in the meantime, whether it is safely in person or virtually online, go take a guided tour of New York City. I plan to. Thank you for having me. Good night.